Welcome to Let Me Say This. Let me ask you this. Who is Julian Kiganda?
You're asking me who I am.
I
Wow.
am.
Okay.
Who are you?
That's a way to kick it off, Tisha. Um, so I would have to say, first and foremost, I am a child of the Most High. That's where I always start because,
Mhm.
I didn't come from nowhere. I was created from a higher power. So I always start with that because I think that's a foundation of who I am. And then I would say I'm a creative right after that. I love creating, making things. I think that's why I'm in the career that I'm in. And then I would like to think that I am a great daughter, a mom, a sister, friend, so many things to other people. But I think at the core of who I am, I'm definitely a child of the Most High and a creative.
So that's interesting. You say you are a creative.
Mhm.
I think I understand what that means, but what does that mean? Just for those who may not know, what is a creative?
A creative, and it's funny because I often say this with one of my fellow creatives, my business partner. We always say we feel that we are so blessed to be able to be co-creators in this world, in terms of just being able to think of something and then finding a way to make it a reality. So from my perspective as a creative, that could be anything from a painting, that could be anything from an exhibit, that could be a book, but really, I think for me, being a creative means seeing something in your mind and then finding a way to create it and make it a reality.
Creative could be somebody who is the best at frying chicken in their area,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
they are creative. It could be somebody
Absolutely.
who can create, I don't know, a dress, somebody who says, oh, I want to look like
That's
this,
it.
and they envision what
That's
that
it.
dress is going to be like. And so
Absolutely.
amazing seamstress, and they put that together. So
Yep.
all those are things that you're saying is a creative.
Oh, absolutely. I think too many times we make it seem like creatives and creativity is only assigned to like those people who are in the fine arts or they're designers or they're painters. But to your point, a great chef is a creative. I mean, that's why it's called art, culinary arts. So I think anybody really can tap into that creativity to create something that they're just passionate about seeing become a reality.
So the first two lines of your LinkedIn bio read as such: I believe stories have the power to transform lives. That's why my passion is helping my clients tell their brand story with clarity, purpose, and soul. Why is storytelling so important to you?
Yeah.
And how do you impart soul into
Mm.
storytelling?
That's a great question. I love it. So I truly believe, and this goes back to one of the reasons why my sister and I even wrote our book. I've come to understand that our stories truly have the power to help somebody get out of a space that they may in, to help them get into a space they want to be, to help them heal, to help them realize that they're not alone. We're kind of talking about that earlier,
Mhm.
to just transform somebody else's life. And I think so many times we feel like our stories are not important enough, they're not powerful enough, we haven't done enough to really share that story, when in reality there is somebody somewhere in this world who needs your story right where they are, and that could be the thing that sparks that change in them but allows them to get to the next chapter in their lives.
So many business owners really struggle with defining their target audience.
Mm.
So, how did you determine your niche? And then, what strategies do you employ to hone in on and talk to your target audience?
Mm. So I would have to say, with honing in on my target audience, I almost feel like it kind of chose me,
Okay.
because that's just who I am. And I think more often than not, we tend to attract who we are. Now, with the work that I do, because I do put so much of myself into it, just from, helping the client to create something that is representative of them. But of course, you're going to have your own personal touch to it. I mean, that's part of why clients go to different, companies versus others, because there's a certain aesthetic, there's a certain process, a certain way of doing things that they prefer over another. But I would have to say from the time that I was probably in my teens, I was very proud of my cultural heritage. And so I tend to attract, clients who really want that vibrant energy as part of their brand aesthetic. And a lot of times the energy you put out there is going to be the energy that you attract. So, that's kind of what I mean when I say that the clients kind of chose me, or my niche chose me, because that is what I put out there. And so I feel like that's what I attract.
You are very confident and very clear about what you're looking for in a client and how you want your business to grow and to develop. How did you get to that point?
Clients like the one I had a few years ago. I feel like, so I try to analyze, right? I try to analyze, the process and projects when they're done. Like I said, I look at what went really well and what can be improved and stuff like that. And so when I start looking at what didn't go well, I start saying, okay, so this did not go well. I do not want to have encounter this type of client again. What are the red flags? And that's part of the intake process. It's part of qualifying a client now. So that becomes part of my qualifying process. And then I think part of it too is, I know that the work that we do is worth what we charge and then some. So I priced it at a certain price point so that I know, okay, there's only certain clients you're going to get at different levels of your business. So every year we level up, we level up, we level up. But I think when you've had enough experiences and you're like, I don't want to deal with that again. It's either you look for those flags, or you don't take on those types of clients anymore, or you change your processes in terms of how you operate with that client and you document everything.
Said that you looked at what do you want to do and your process, your intake process. So talk about, what does the intake process look like? And then two, what is it that you do to look at, okay, the overall scheme of things, how do I need to revamp what I'm doing to get to where I want to be?
So I think for your first question, what I had to start doing was I create an online form just by every client before I start working with them, unless it's a client that I've worked with before, or it's somebody who was referred and they're very clear about what they need. But just by every new contact, I have them fill out that form, which has very specific questions. It includes questions about, what's your purpose? What's your mission? What's your vision? What is your greatest need? How can we help you get to where you're looking to go? What's your budget?
Budget, big one.
That is a major qualifier. And just from their answer, you can usually tell, okay, so this is going to be the kind of client that I don't know. Now, I don't write them off right away, because sometimes that they honestly don't know. They may have the money, but they don't know what something like that costs. But more often than not, we work with clients who are very clear about what it costs and are ready to pay that. And there are some new businesses who have come in and said, okay, I there's a budget I'm looking at, but once they see what they really need and what we're able to deliver, they're like, okay, fine, what do we need to do to make it work? So it's not just one thing we look at. There's a range of things we look at. And then part of it too is, I learned this from one of my mentors a while ago. That form is actually part of why I started doing that with new clients, is if they're not willing to fill out these details in a form, then what makes you think they're going to be committed to the process of working with you? Because it's a process. It's not something that what we do doesn't happen overnight, at least not for the longevity that we try to achieve for our clients. But that was a major part of qualifying clients. And even now, we'll do, once they fill out that form, we usually do a 20 to 30-minute call where I get a better sense of what they're looking for. And from that call, I can pretty much tell whether or not this is going to be, a client that we move forward with, or okay, do I have a referral partner that I send them to instead? So I would say that's the first piece of that. And then what was your second question?
So BKJ Designs has worked with some really well-known brands. So what advice do you have for entrepreneurs who want to work with celebrities or A-listers?
Mm, yeah, that's, you know, it's interesting because every single celebrity or A-list client that I've worked with, and I'm grateful to say that I've worked with several, and I actually have some as clients now, they were all referred to me.
Mm, okay.
Um, and so I haven't necessarily gone seeking them. It has been more of my work and my team, the work that we put in really speaking for itself. And it's funny because I'm finding that I'm attracting more of those types of clients,
Mm-hmm.
especially this year. I think COVID has really gotten people to be even more mindful of their online presence because we're
Right.
spending so much more time online.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I would say first and foremost, do your work with integrity. I was just talking to, I forgot who I was talking to. Actually, a new client. And, they were saying that one of the reasons why they're successful in an industry and they do a lot of health and human services type work in the DC area is because their competitors engage in practices that, lack integrity. And so they have found that, they're referred to clients because of the fact that these people who are their referral partners know that they're going to conduct themselves with integrity. And so I would say first and foremost, I think that's the most important thing is do your work with integrity. I would say, secondly, be authentic. Like, be authentically who you are, because again, it goes back to the energy you put out is what you're going to attract. I'm authentically who I am on just about every platform I try to be, and I feel like because of that, that is again part of what attracts certain clientele. And then I think three, just and this is something that I have to say I probably came into later in my career, because a lot of times when you're new in your career, you're building your business, you're going out there, you're networking, and you're not as empathetic about those relationships you're building, because a lot of times you're more focused on climbing the ladder.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what a lot of what this world tells you is about: climbing the corporate ladder or climbing the success ladder. It doesn't matter who you step on the way up. And I wouldn't say that I intentionally stepped on people, but I would say I was not as empathetic and mindful of just my relationships as I was building my business. So you go through the school of hard knocks, you have those aha moments, and you're like, oh, yeah, I need to change that if I'm going to move the needle to where I really want to go. And then I think also the older you get, I feel when you start becoming just more reflective and really focusing on personal development, you start looking at the things that you need to change in yourself. And because for me, in this chapter of my life, I want to do work that's meaningful. It's not just about adding stuff to my portfolio. Now, I have a great portfolio of work. That's cool. But I want to do work that's meaningful, because that's what lights my fire in the morning. That's what I get excited about in the morning. So, I feel like as long as you are constantly looking at how to improve yourself as an individual, you can bring that same work ethic and that same knowledge and empathy, more empathy to the work that you do. So, I think it's also important as you are, looking to attract certain clientele or even actively pursuing certain clientele, care about other people, like authentically care about other people. I always think about, I don't know if it was Oprah or Maya Angelou who said, people just want to know three things. They want to know that you care. They want to know that, no, they want to know that they matter. They want to know that you hear them, and they want to know that you see them. And I feel like if you do that, again, that's the same thing that you're going to attract. I truly believe in whatever you put out is whatever is going to come back to you. I would say, when I work with clients and we look at the initial process of just looking at what they're about, what services to provide, but most importantly, what's unique about them? What is their story? When we look at that, I think our goal is to really be able to make that part of their story just sing. And, I'll give you one example, which to this day, it sticks with me because it just demonstrated, I think, in a very tangible way, the power of telling a story in a powerful way. So years ago, we were hired to design the National Urban League's 100-year, their centennial exhibit. They had their conference in Washington, D.C. So we were tasked with basically building this 4,000 square foot, we called it a mobile museum because it really was like a museum when you walked into it, but it was mobile. And our job was to tell the story of the Urban League, the past, the present, and the future, and really show all of the people who had helped to build the organization to what it was, people from the civil rights movement. The Urban League started in 1910 as part of a way to help those African Americans who were migrating up north from the South for opportunity, to give them resources, to help them find jobs, find housing, help. So all those things was a heart of why they started. And they were also very active. Their leadership was very active in the civil rights movement. And so that was part of the story we told them. We talked about, what they were doing now, what they saw as the future. And so we built this really, to this day, I think it's my favorite project because it allowed me, I tell people that I have creative schizophrenia sometimes. And what that means is like, I think in like Prismacolor, like almost all the time. And so, this particular project allowed us to create video. It allowed us to create a built environment. It included interior design, included lighting design, it included interactive design. It was a very tangible thing. And then it was a museum. So we got to curate all these amazing artifacts as part of the exhibit. So it really allowed me to use, I say, like all of me, all of my creative gifts. And that was my prayer, actually, when we were designing that exhibit, which we only had 5 months to do. It's kind of crazy.
Wow. 5 months.
It was insane.
4,000 square feet
Oh
in
my
5
gosh.
months.
When I
That's
tell
a
you,
lot.
this is why I would say I was praying just about every day because I was just like, Lord, I don't know how we gonna do this, but I know you're gonna make something happen. But truly, as we were working on that project, one of my greatest prayers was, you know what, I just want this exhibit to touch people. I want them to be inspired. I want them to feel something when they walk through it. And that's, something that I imparted on my team. I had an incredible team. Wouldn't have been able to do it without them. And on the second day that the exhibit opened, this is the Washington Convention Center, there was a group of teenagers who were part of one of the programs that was coming there for the summer. And there's a young man who had come to our exhibit booth, and my business partner at the time actually told me about this because she was there. So he had come, sat down, plopped himself in our exhibit booth because we had our business had an exhibit booth right next to this main exhibit. So he came, plopped himself down, he was chilling. My business partner was like, so are you planning on working for us? Because you're sitting in our booth. And he was like, oh, no, I was just chilling, typical teenager, And so she was like, I want you to go over there. So you see that over there? He's like, yeah. She was like, I want you to go over there. I want you to walk through it. And then I want you to come back and tell me about your experience. So she was pointing to this exhibit. So the young man, to his credit, he got up while he's probably about 17, 18 at the time, went into the exhibit. About 20, 30 minutes later, he came back to the exhibit booth, and my business partner said that he was a different person when he came out.
Wow.
He said, wow, you all did that? She's like, yeah. She's like, yeah, our company created that. We designed it. We built it, all of that. And he was like, wow, like you could just see the transformation and the awe in seeing people who look like him doing these amazing things, making such an impact in history. And so, that's really, I think, one of the times where I really saw the power of story and
Mhm.
telling it in a way that really connects with people. So that's really what we try to bring with all the clients that we do with my company, is really get to the heart of what makes this business, this service, this individual special, and how do we tell that story in a way that connects with their audience in a way that is going to be unforgettable.
Unforgettable. I love that.
Mm.
What was that? A Natalie Cole song? What?
Unforgettable. Oh, that's what you are. Yes.
Unforgettable. That's what you are, right? That's what she said, huh?
Hmm.
So in honor of Natalie, we say that. Oh,
Yeah.
unforgettable.
Yes.
All right, so let's move on to my next question. So we are a nation and we're dealing with situations of injustice and are
Mm.
having more and more conversations about diversity in business. So
Mm.
please talk a bit about how you work with clients to be more inclusive in their graphic design and marketing
Mm.
campaigns.
Mm. Well, that's a great question, Tisha, because we actually worked together on something related to just that.
We did. We did.
We website, except for that token Black person that
That
looks
one
like us.
person, they stick there.
That one person. It's like one of y'all, that's enough. That's diversity. You know? So I think we're tired of that. I think, the events of 2020, it was a buildup from what had been building for so long. It's like, okay, enough is enough. And here's the thing, like anytime there are issues that happen, of racism that happen in the Black community, there's this big uproar, and you have these corporations, organizations, businesses who put these statements on their websites, and then that's it.
That's it.
Like there's
It goes
no
away.
additional, that it goes away, right? I think the thing that is different with this time is that we are almost a year into all the riots that happened after George Floyd last year. And these businesses, organizations, corporations are still being called to the carpet on their diversity and inclusion initiatives, where this is not one of those things where they can just put up a statement anymore. I think we're holding them more accountable on an ongoing basis to actually doing something that shows real commitment to diversity and inclusion, and not just a token Black face. So for me, when it comes to diversity and inclusion, I talk about this a lot with Vernon, my business partner. We talk about branding inclusion. And what that means is that you are building in, for me, from a cultural perspective, you are building that in from the ground up. So that includes how you communicate both within and outside of the organization. That includes, who is featured in your materials and the diversity of people that are featured, because as people come, we come in all shapes, sizes, tones, and textures. And one token Black face does not represent like the diversity of who we are.
Right.
That can be included in the color palette you use, in the fonts you use, in even the way you design things, because again, we have a different aesthetic as well. So how do you how are you culturally inclusive of how you demonstrate that in your company? So you and I actually met through the project that we did for the Charles County Public Library System, where I think that was a perfect example of an organization that, they had the same logo for probably 20 years. Nobody could define what it was. Nobody,
Right.
nobody knew what
Nobody
it was.
knew what it was, but they were proud of it.
This day, I don't think anybody knows. But our company was approached to work with Charles County Public Library to help them not just upgrade the brand, but to really demonstrate through the rebranding how the county had actually become much more diverse. How is that going to be demonstrated in this brand? So, we went through, that was, I think, like a 6-month process,
It was.
and that's the part I think people don't take into account, is that it is a process. It's not something that you're going to fix right away. I think the great thing about Charles County Public Library System was that, one, they recognized the need to be culturally inclusive, from the very beginning, which that was a huge milestone in and of itself, because a lot of businesses don't necessarily do it because they feel they need to do it from an integrity and a representation standpoint. They feel they need to do it just to protect their dollars, and I'm like, well, that's not sustainable, because if you're not doing it with the right intention, it's only going to last for so long. And you really have to have buy-in from the top. So, working on that project, we went through a whole entire, exercise with several people on the staff. It was a very diverse team, which I love, because we got diverse viewpoints, and we were able to incorporate that into the brand, into the messaging, into the color scheme, into just everything. And that's another great project that, we had a lot of fun working on, just because it was such a collaborative process. And I felt that, the client really understood what the end goal was, and was really looking at the long term, that this was more than just a logo, a brand identity, fonts or whatever, but this was really something they wanted to bake into. And I think it was already baked into the culture of the organization. They really wanted to now show it through how they visually represented themselves. So, I mean, to this day, it's just an amazing thing being able to drive by the building and seeing the new brand, and people getting
all out there,
the
right?
library cards, so that was a lot of fun to collaborate on. I think that, for me, was such a great example of getting that buy-in from the top, which made our jobs easier. We didn't have to convince them that this was important, but they were all in.
Project. And I want to go a little bit deeper and just kind of reveal some of the stuff that were behind the scenes there with this. Yeah. So the first thing you came to the table with, I wasn't good with.
Yep, I remember.
I wasn't. So talk a little bit about that, what that was like for you, because here we are. I was, and I'll share, I was the only Black person of within the senior ranks at that library system. And I was the director of marketing and development, and in charge of this whole rebranding process. And so here I am bringing in another Black female, because I'm like, yes, I want a Black female to do this. And then you brought something to me and I was not okay with it.
None of you were. Yeah. So I think the thing about creatives is very often we tend to take our stuff, like Erykah Badu says, I ain't gonna say it on here, but we take our stuff, very personally. we sensitive about our stuff. But if you've been in this game long enough and you recognize this is a business that's about delivering for the client, you start learning how to separate your personal preferences from what's actually best in the long term for the client. I mean, there's definitely times I'll fight for things, but other times I'm like, okay, you know what? They have a point there. So I think with that process, that very first iteration of what we gave you all as the identity, I think that was a matter of not having had enough intel in terms of the direction you wanted to go. So what happened after that is like, oh, we heard one thing, but you actually meant something else. So we actually ended up talking through it a little more in terms of, okay, what is it that you really want? Because, some of the examples that we were given about other systems whose, brand presence you liked, I think we tried to incorporate elements of those brands, and it just was not demonstrative of what you all really wanted for the library. So this is why it's an iterative process. Design and branding is an iterative process. And you have to, I think for it to work really well, the client has to be willing to listen to the expertise that they hired, and the consultant or the brand agency has to be willing to really listen to what the client may not even say, but they have to be able to really read between the lines and get to the soul of the brand that they're looking to build.
Were you able to, because I know a lot of business owners would have taken that personally and would have said, what? I can't believe her. She told me, no, I don't like this.
Yep. Yeah.
So how were you able to, and I think you spoke to that a little bit,
Mhm.
just understanding that, not taking it personal and
Mhm.
but how did you get to that point?
Yeah.
And what recommendations or what advice would you give to business owners when they're receiving constructive criticism? How do
Mhm.
you then pick yourselves up and move
Mhm.
forward?
Yeah. So I would have to say uh experience is the best teacher. I don't think there's any way around that. I think if you've been in this game long enough and you've had enough successful, projects, you start kind of looking at, okay, what works and what doesn't. And, we
Mhm.
try to really analyze with each project what went really well, what can we improve, that type of thing. Um, so I think one, just having that experience with different clients. I think two, really recognizing that, it's not about you, right? I do definitely think that there are creatives out there who they make it about them and it's not always what's really best for the client, but what they really like. And at the end of the day, my one of my greatest prayers is that I am able to serve others in a way that makes an impact, a greater impact. And to be able to do that, you have to really be a good listener. You have
Mhm.
to, I think that's one of the most important skills in being a creative and creating things for other people that represent them, is that you have to listen, and you have to listen beyond what they're even saying. Because quite honestly, most clients don't know what they want. They really don't.
Mhm.
Most clients don't know what they want. And so it's our jobs as designers, as brand strategists, as creatives, to be able to translate both what they've said and what is left unsaid, into something that they're like, wow, this is what I've been looking for. Comes from this, I have to be okay with that. But at the same time, you have to be strong enough in your own conviction to be able to steer that client if you see they're going in a direction that is not going to serve them well in the long term. At the end of the day, it's up to them to decide whether or not they're going to take the advice that they hired you to give. But it is your responsibility to at least put it out there and be like, well, this is probably not where you want to go, and this is why. I don't think it's enough anymore to say no, you shouldn't do that. You have to really give practical reasons why. And a lot of times it's sometimes it's tied to the audience, and that may not resonate well with your audience. And sometimes it's tied to actual measurables, like, okay, well, that's not going to really bring you the kind of profit or the result that you're looking for, and here is why. So I think it's a combination of things, but I would say listening, and just separating yourself from the process, so to speak, are probably two of the most important things for me.
Right. So I end my show the exact same way every time. The name of the show is Let Me Say This. All right. So let me say this. And then I want you to frame it. Say, let me say this. And then give us some words, some wisdom, some parting words, anything like that. So let me hear what you got.
Let me say this. I think the most important journey of your life that you can take is a journey to get to know who you are. And once you really know who you are and you really tap into the magic of everything that is in you, and every single one of us has our own magic. Once you really tap into that energy, you're going to start finding that you are attracting more of that professionally, personally, in your relationships. Just everywhere you go, you're going to attract more of that into your life. So whatever you do, be very mindful about who you are and the energy you're putting out, because I have seen it without a doubt in my life, good or bad, it will come back to you. So just take the time to really get to know yourself and just love on yourself.
There you go. I love that. Love on yourself. All
Yeah.
right. So people are going to want to get in touch with you. How do they do that?
Yeah, so they can find me everywhere at JBK Brand Design. And my website is jbkbranddesign.com. I'm also on social media, just with my name. That's my personal platform at Julian B. Kiganda. And then, of course, our book is available on Amazon. Whose shoes are you wearing? 12 Steps to Uncovering the Woman You Really Want to Be.
All right. Thank you so much, Julian Kiganda. Wonderful talking with you. It's been
Likewise.
amazing knowing you these last couple of years, and I cannot wait to see what is in store for what you are going to do with your company, with your business, with your brand. All right. Thank you
Thank
so much,
you.
and take care.
You too.